So, one of the things that I have noticed to be relatively common when people are entering the world of consulting is that most often we try to straddle the fence between business to business and business to consumer consulting. And this is a huge mistake starting out. And I think it's because it presents a more complex picture than many people imagine. And oftentimes they're driven to the business to business or B2B market because of the potential to make more money. It seems to be the way to go because contracts are larger and you feel as if you can really build a business with a solid financial foundation that way. However, there are a lot of challenges I think people overlook, and it can complicate their growth and make it more difficult for them to succeed and be a profitable business. So if you are tuning in for the first time, welcome to the Black Girls Consult 2 podcast. I am your host, Dr. Angelina Davis, and I'm so excited to be talking to you today about B2B versus B2C marketing in consulting. So if you're ready to learn a little bit more, I'm going to share 3 tips with you that I think is going to be really, really helpful, and I'm hoping that you will enjoy. So let's get started. There's a misconception that we don't exist, that somehow our ability to excel at the highest level of our industry is limited, that overcoming barriers as a woman of color would be insurmountable. But what would happen if we decided to venture out on our own despite everything we're up against? I'll tell you. Welcome to the Black Girls Consult 2 podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Angelina Davis, a healthcare consultant, consulting coach, high performance fanatic, wife, and proud girl mom. I help transform female professionals into thriving solo consultants. And just like you, I'm wearing all the hats and doing all the things. So this podcast is to empower the busy female professionals to move past fear to start and grow a successful consulting business, despite the obstacles you may encounter. We'll dive deep into consulting practice, business strategy, mindset, and more. So grab your cup of coffee or tea if that's your thing, and let's get started. So it can be really tempting to want to go between the business to business and business to consumer space because I think we feel like our options would be more open and we'll be able to generate more business, attract more clients, and definitely land more contracts. But I want to stress that these two worlds are very, very different. And your ability to successfully market and sell in both the business space and the consumer space is going to be highly dependent upon your ability to effectively market to those two different audiences. And because those audiences are vastly different and because they have different needs and different ways that you need to approach the whole aspect and process of really generating leads and selling and converting clients, it's going to be really important for you to really think about how you can, instead of really going back and forth between the two, hone in, niche down, and narrow in your approach so that you are either looking to seek business in the business to business space or in the business to consumer B2C space. Now, one thing that you want to consider, and probably the first thing that you will want to consider, is the fact that these two different markets are vastly different just solely based upon the price point. And I think that is something that sounds a little bit appealing because in the business to business space, oftentimes contracts can be rather large. Although I like to remind people that you want to break those contracts down by the time that it's going to take you to complete the project. And so if that contract is for a period of 10 to 12 months or maybe 2 to 3 years, you want to see what that revenue is going to be that you're generating from month to month, as well as all the other additional expenses that you may have to deal with, such as paying out subcontractors or other type of assistance in the work that you want to deliver. Another thing to remember is that those larger price tickets also come with a more complex process. And so you will find that in the B2B space, oftentimes the way that you are able to market and sell in that environment is going to be more time consuming. It's going to be a more complex process for you to navigate the various channels of approval. And because of that, it can actually be very difficult for you to do that effectively while also trying to appeal to the business to consumer space, which can can most times be a little bit easier to navigate in terms of really breaking through some of the noise and reaching your key decision maker. So that is going to be one thing to keep in mind, is that the complexity of the process in terms of being able to just sell your services and for them to make the purchase from you and contract with you is going to be more complex in the business to business space versus the business to consumer. So this is a great segue because we can move right into number 2. Part of the reason why that is the case is because there are just more people involved. There are more people involved in the overall process. It's not just about selling to one individual. That is the case oftentimes in the business to consumer market. You're trying to get your services in front of the ideal buyer, the ideal client, so that they can make a decision as to whether or not they want to work with you based on what you're able to provide. But in the business to business space, you have to think about a number of different individuals. It's not just about the key decision maker. It's also about those who may be advocates for your service, that are going to be the individuals that you work most closely with on a day-to-day basis. And often the key decision maker may not even be involved in the process. They may be higher up in the administration level or in the C-suite. And so they are roughly somewhat detached from the day-to-day activities that you may be really involved with when it comes to doing your day-to-day work. So there is going to be different messaging that goes into place, whether or not you're talking to someone who is going to be very familiar with what you are offering and the services that you're carrying out day to day, and someone that you have to sell on the overall global picture and how that actually impacts the overall organization. Those are two completely different things to present, but you have to do both, especially in the B2B space, because you are going to have to win the buy-in from a number of individuals that may be involved in the project. So it's a more complex process, not just in terms of the red tape and the things that you have to go through to get the approval, but also the individuals that you have to sell on the services that you provide. This is not the case in the business consumer space. In the B2C space, there is going to be an easier route to get to your key decision maker, to get to your ideal client. You don't have to worry about all of the various channels and bringing in so many people and getting their buy-in and their approval. And so the process of really landing the contract in the business consumer space in that regard is easier. And because it is easier, you have to keep in mind that there is also the potential and the ability to land more and more contracts of that nature. And so when people are looking at this overall ability to make a certain amount of money and they attribute that to the business to business space, I tell them and remind them that you have the ability to make a significant amount of money also in the business consumer space if you are positioned correctly. Because in those particular instances, you're able to market your services differently and definitely reach more potential buyers. And so you have to keep that in mind when you're going back and thinking about which space is the one you actually be in. Okay, so the third thing that I want to point out is that there are often stricter rules and regulations in the B2B space. And this is important because this keeps you from really being a little bit more free and creative with your strategy and what you are offering, because there will be rules that you may have to abide by. That is often not the case when it comes to the business consumer space. And so there's more flexibility, there's more of an ability to be creative and to really venture out in a number of different directions. But when you're working in the B2B space, there will be requirements and regulations that most organizations, especially larger organizations, are going to have in place that are going to limit you somewhat in terms of what you're able to do and what you're able to offer, and things that you're going to also have to do in order to meet their standards and expectations. And so I think this is one component that most people forget about, and they don't really consider all of those factors when they are determining or making their decision as to whether or not they go into the business to consumer or business to business space. But by being mindful of those things and knowing whether or not they align with your business or your goals, that is going to help help you make a better decision as to which route will be best for you, because that is going to definitely be important. You will not have a choice as to whether or not you follow these rules and regulations, because it is going to be required in order to obtain that contract or to satisfy the rules and the conditions for that engagement. And oftentimes, especially when you're working in the B2B space, many of these things may be outlined in the contracts that are developed and also may be audited or evaluated periodically. So you want to be mindful of what those rules or regulations actually are, understand them fully, especially if you're going after things such as government contracts, and be willing and ready to adapt and to address that need. And once again, that is something that you would not necessarily have to worry about in the business to consumer space. So overall, when you're thinking about all of these vast differences between the two, you have to understand that the way that you market and position yourself is going to be different. When you're looking to be in the business to business space and to market your services and sell them effectively, you have to think more globally. You have to think in terms of big picture, how you're able to offer these services, how you're able to bring in all of the various stakeholders and key decision makers so that you can get them on board and really align them with the goal of your services and what you're offering. And that is going to be a very different message than what you would put out in the business to consumer space, where you're just worried about speaking to your ideal client, really catering to their needs and really focusing on their individual pain point. When it comes to business, the solutions and the problems that you're solving may be numerous and may be vast. They actually may have a certain level of, complexity or heterogeneity in them, so that you have to really dig a little bit deeper in order to meet those needs. But either way, you can do it. The key is just to know the difference and to understand how to better position yourself and how to build all of that information into your sales process. So I hope this conversation helps. I often find myself really encouraging others to think through the two processes, the differences between the B2B and the B2C space, and choose an avenue that really fits you, your personality, and your lifestyle. Because by choosing either one path or the other, especially in the early stages of business growth, is going to help you grow faster, because then you can tailor your messaging and you can truly, truly present an offer that they cannot resist. So if you have enjoyed this episode, I ask that you share it with a friend. Definitely leave your review on Apple Podcasts or your rating on Spotify. And join me again for another episode here on the Black Girls Consult 2 podcast. Until next time, take care. Thank you for tuning in to the Black Girls Consult 2 podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to leave your review on Apple Podcasts, subscribe, and share it with a friend. We're on a mission to increase the success and longevity of women in consulting, and you can help us do that. Also, I'd love to hear from you, so let's connect at Dr. Angelina Davis on Instagram or LinkedIn. And don't forget to visit excelatconsulting.com for more information to support your consulting journey. Until next time, take care.